Well, good evening, everyone. This is our first of hopefully many more to come webinar series with Propel Partners in Wellness, which I'll keep referring to throughout as PPIW. My name is Raylene Owens. I am a Propel SAP liaison staff at Montour Elementary School. Also, another host that we have on here is Erin Strader. She is a prevention specialist on Montour High School with Propel. And also Lindsay Vicoria. She is also a SAP liaison with Propel Hazelwood. So what we wanted to do was go over some anxiety and how that is interacted with social media, since now during COVID, we're all using social media more than usual. I know myself, I never did use social media, and now it has become a thing of a daily living for me and my children as well. So this is something that we put together along with, we have a special guest, Mr. Ryan Klingensmith from Shape the Sky. He is an expert on social media. And with that, we have collaborated and decided to see how social media is affecting mental wellness, which is the anxiety piece that we are going to discuss with you further down here. Let's see the next slide, please, Lindsay. So just some things I wanted to go over. First, the agenda. I said it's the introduction of social media and mental wellness, the first part series that we are first trying out with PPIW. Some housekeeping information I'll go over as far as community guidelines and rules. And then I will send a presentation over to Mr. Ryan Klingensmith from Shape the Sky. Then after that, we will follow with two Propel Montour High School scholars that will share their experiences with social media and anxiety. And we will come back to a PPIW presentation with the anxiety piece. And following that, we will have a conclusion with some techniques to give you as far as to debrief from anxiety, as well as some chance for Q&A and some questions from the chat. And when you put in the questions through the chat, please dictate who they're to. Like, for instance, you could put question and -Ryan, so we know who to address those questions to. We'll make it easier for us to be able to go through the chat. So some community guidelines to go through are, first, we want to let everyone know that this is a safe and open space for scholars, families to freely express their feelings and their experiences. So with that being said, we want to make sure that we are modeling respect and empathy to everyone. Focus on your own feelings and your own learning. That way, those biases that are always underlying can be addressed internally and not externally. And then always be open to new ideas. And also, just a reminder, we as PPIW staff, which is myself, Lindsay, Erin, and there are also some other PPIW staff on, as well as Carrie Wooder, are mandated reporters, meaning if mentioned within the discussion, such as someone describing harm to themselves or others, or any form of abuse, neglect, or mention, then it becomes our responsibility and duty to practice ethics and to report appropriately. Also, if throughout the presentation, some triggers may arise from past experiences or memories or anything of that such, or not even during the presentation, but for any time, if anyone is experiencing a crisis and needs immediate non-emergency assistance, please call Resolve at 1-888-796-8226, or you can simply text 741-741. And it's if in the case of an immediate emergency assistance, please do not hesitate to call your local police department or simply dial 911. And now we will pass it on to Mr. Ryan Klingensmith from Shape the Sky.
All right, well, thank you. I am going to share my screen here in a minute. So give me a second to get that started. I'm really glad to be here. I apologize if there's any noise in the background. I kind of double booked myself here. I'm at a birthday party hidden in a room. So if there's any noise in the background, I apologize for that. My children are a wee bit noisy out there. Can everybody hear me? Is that give thumbs up from you guys? All right. Okay. I'm going to proceed here then. Well, I want to call this presentation what I'm going to talk about parenting in a digital world and the term dangerous apps. I hear that the word, I travel all over the place and I hear the word dangerous apps all over the place. And I want to talk to you guys about that. I'm a licensed professional counselor. I've been working in mental health for about 25 years. I started off in inpatient psychiatric hospitals and worked in RTFs, group homes, where else have I worked? Shelters, outpatient. I've done outpatient counseling, and primarily I did the outpatient counseling with, youth. I enjoy working with youth. No offense to adults, but I just like working with kids. They keep me young and fresh, so to speak. Currently, I have worked in student assistance programs in the past in elementary, middle, and high schools. And a student assistance program is there. It's a program within the school. People will have a little bit more training around mental health and such. And, then when there's a struggle with a student in a school, whether it's emotional, academic behavior, whatever it is, then I come in and I meet with these kids and try to get them connected to the proper supports. Currently, I'm an educational mentor actually for the Montour School District. I go to the elementary, middle, and high school, and I check in with these kids and I try to connect them to services or keep them moving in the right direction or making sure that they are doing their homework or whatever it is. Sometimes they just need somebody to check in with them. And I really, really enjoy that job. But doing that job, I have come to be around kids and technology and social media. When I was doing these trainings, close to 10 years ago, I was targeting high school parents and kids. And now, 2020, I'm targeting elementary school kids and parents because they have the same technology. It's all kind of flowed downhill over the years. So that's why I wanted to talk to you about dangerous apps today. My ultimate goal is to create responsible kids on smartphones or smart devices. They're using them with everybody staying home. They were on technology way more than they have been in the past. So they're using it. I want them to use it responsibly, but that has to be based upon changes in adult awareness and education. Because adults are the ones that we need to be monitoring. We need to be teaching. We need to be role modeling how to use this. But if we don't know what all that is, then it's really hard for us to do that. I want to congratulate you. If you're a parent out there, you're one of the first generation digital parents. If you think about, the things that you said to your kids, it's probably based upon stuff that was said to you. Sorry, it's getting a little bit noisy out there. Out in the hallway, I'm just texting them to tell them to be quiet a little bit. Sorry. But anyway, if you think about how you parent your kids, you parent them based upon how you were parented. Okay. So if you looked at ancestry.com, went the whole way back to your lineage, and some of the things that are being said to you now may have been said to your ancestors way down the road, because we do with kids what works, based upon what has worked through history. Okay, so I say some of the things to my kids that were said to me growing up because it worked. There's no history of what works with digital technology. I mean, this is new, and we're the first generation having to be digital parents or digital teachers or digital aunts or uncles or grandparents. And we all have a different baseline from this. We don't have a history of what worked. You could kind of read a textbook from a researcher, but it's not based on history and proven techniques as a parent. It's based upon like research, and that's great, but it's not based upon, who out there is reading all the research, right? We're trying to get through this as parents. And leading up to that means you can't raise your children the way your parents raised you. That world just doesn't exist, right? So if you think about, when you were growing up, there was one phone and was on the wall. It was the phone. Now it's everybody's phone, my phone, his phone, her phone. So you can't raise your children like you were raised. And I want to pull up this slide. If you're not familiar with this, this is the Connor family from the Roseanne show back in the 80s. And, I really wanted to use this picture here in particular. There's Roseanne on the left and her daughter Darlene and Becky and Dan, the dad, and then DJ. You can't see him. He's facing away from us. But that's the family unit. And they're sitting there at the kitchen. And if you're familiar with this show, the living room's off to the left there. But if you look above Roseanne's head, there's a phone, right? And if you have seen the show, think about how it looked. And you know, often you'd see them on the phone discussing whatever was going on, and everybody could see it, right? It was very obvious because the phone was right there. So and it was right between the kitchen and the living room, so you could actually take it in the living room. But the point is, it was there in the middle of the room. So I'll come back to that picture here in a minute. But I want to, in preparation for this, I did a little Google search on dangerous apps. Okay, so I got into Google and I typed in dangerous apps, and look at that, 433 million results. That is a lot of results. That's a lot of people posting about or writing about or sharing the term dangerous apps. That's a huge number. So I wanted to also Google risky behaviors, right? So I Googled risky behaviors, and I got 41.9 million. So about 42 million compared to 433 million. That is a huge difference. And as I go through here, we're going to be talking about risky behaviors compared to dangerous apps. So I think it might be a little bit backwards when we're talking about dangerous apps. So if you think about, you know, the sitcoms of the 80s or maybe the 90s, there was always like this lesson at the end, okay? You know, with whatever happened at the end, there seemed to be some kind of lesson, okay? I think we've lost that in sitcoms now, but through the 80s and probably the early 90s, you know, there was a lesson at the end of it, okay? So I want you to think about the Connors here and the Roseanne show and tell me if you think there would have been a lesson at the end of any of these situations. So we'll start with Becky there in the red shirt, right? So if Becky's on that phone right above Roseanne's head saying mean things, do you think there would have been a lesson at the end? Or if DJ was on the phone threatening somebody and somebody heard it, do you think there would have been a lesson at the end of that episode? Or if Darlene was on there trying to buy drugs, right, through the phone, make a purchase and hook something up with some of her friends, like, would there have been a lesson? There would have been a drug lesson, right? Or if Becky was talking about being depressed and sad and not knowing what to do, or if DJ was talking about self-harm, or if Darlene was talking about suicide, would there have been a lesson at the end, right? And think about this, if Becky there took off her clothes in the middle of the kitchen, took a picture of herself on the phone and sent it to somebody else through that phone, would there have been a lesson at the end? Absolutely, right? That would have been the whole episode. It might have been big enough to be 2 weeks in a row episode, double episode, but there would have been a lesson at the end. And why would there have been a lesson at the end? Because those are all risky behaviors, right? Okay, and as parents, you know, we want to address the behavior. Okay, I don't address, you know, items my children have. I talk about the behavior, how they use it. I don't address my son's bike. I talk to him about how to ride it safely. Wear your helmet. You know, the conditions when he's riding through gravel compared to grass, compared to dirt, compared to asphalt. I don't address the dangerous bike. I talk about his behaviors and how to use it. So in all those cases, the parent would address the behavior. I'm crisis trained for many years in TCI, which is Therapeutic Crisis Interventionist through Cornell University. And one of the key concepts of Cornell University's training, this crisis training, is that every behavior has meaning. So when Dan and Roseanne are addressing those behaviors with their children, they're really wanting to get to the meaning. Why are you doing this? Why do you want to buy drugs online? Why are you threatening somebody online? Why are you wanting to take your clothes off and take a picture of yourself? Those are the behaviors, but they're trying to get to the meaning of the behavior, because that's really where it changes. So I think about it like this. In all those situations, would Dan or Roseanne blame the phone and call it dangerous and say, that phone's dangerous, you can't use it anymore, and just totally ignore the behaviors that are going on? That doesn't make much sense to me. I don't think they do that. Like, if you think about the lesson at the end, they wouldn't be blaming the phone. They'd be looking at the behavior and the meaning behind the behavior, right? But yet, we as a society, 433 million posts about dangerous apps. We're blaming the phones, we're blaming the apps, but we have to look at it differently. My mission is to provide prevention education, so these trainings, so for the behaviors, so how we think about kids and technology. I'm trying to provide a little bit of education, get you thinking in a different direction about this. And then providing prevention resources. The Shape the Sky website has a lot of good free resources on there. If you go to Google, as I showed you there, you know, there's just so much stuff out there What do you use? What's good? Where do you go for the right information? On the website, I try to provide prevention resources for you that I feel are pretty good ones. So it helps you hone down on those there. And then also providing intervention resources. So maybe something's happened, right? What do I do? Well, they're also on there too. The resources I have on there are both really good prevention and intervention resources. And there's a gap between kids and adults. I mean, there always is a gap between kids and adults, right? I'm at a birthday party for a 60-year-old here, and our oldest member is 88 and the youngest member is 9. So there's a huge gap between kids and adults when it comes to different technologies and what's going on. So, and that's always going to be there, right? But I think about it like this: young people have the knowledge to work the technology, but they lack the wisdom to use it responsibly because their brains just aren't done developing yet, right? But we as adults have the wisdom to behave on it and use it wisely, but we don't know how to use it, right? They know how to use it, they don't know how to behave on it. We know how to behave on it, but we don't know how to use it. And that's the gap that I'm trying to fill. And I'm going to try to shape some of your wisdom into knowledge today. But in other words, to be old and wise, you first have to be young and stupid, right? It's just part of growing up. Kids are going to make mistakes, right? And we'll talk about that a little bit later, but kids are going to make mistakes. I mean, that's just part of life, making mistakes, right? So we got to get them through this, okay? And I think about it like this. Let's look at that slow rolling wave as a child's mistake, right? So we want to help them because they're always going to be making mistakes, and let's help them through the small mistakes. But let's try to intervene and give them education and tips and tools so we can prevent the big mistakes, right? We want to prevent the big mistakes. They're going to make mistakes. Let's help them roll through those small mistakes like the small waves there, and let's help prevent the big mistakes like that giant wave right there. And really, where do you have the most influence? Okay, so let's look at this. I did this little research here. This is the fourth quarter 2019, right? And I'm going to start there at the bottom and the right. The Amazon App Store has 489,000 apps in it. The Windows Store has 669,000 apps. The Apple App Store has 1.8 million apps in it. And the Google Play Store has 2.5 million apps in it. Do you have any influence over those companies and all of those apps, right? Do you have any influence? Can you call up the Apple App Store and tell them to get rid of Snapchat, right? That's not going to happen. Or can you go call up Google Play and tell them to get rid of TikTok? That's not going to happen, right? You have no influence over there. So try not to make yourself nuts trying to get through to the controlling the technology, right? But you do have influence over your kids, right? And those, if you're a teacher, they're around the kids you're around every day. If you're an aunt, an uncle, grandparent, foster parent, whatever you are, you have influence over those young people you're trying to help raise, or you are raising, right? You have some influence. Look at that mom. Do you think she has any influence over that child, right? Absolutely. Starting from a young age, you have influence over your kids, right? So let's focus on teaching responsible behaviors, okay? Instead of trying to control dangerous apps or being afraid of dangerous apps, right? I've got apps all through my phone that I use for work to research this stuff. They don't hurt me. They don't do damage. None of them, Instagram has never gone into my wallet and taken a picture of my driver's license and posted it on Instagram all by itself, right? Because that's a risky behavior that could turn into a dangerous situation. If I post my driver's license on Instagram, y'all know where I live, right? Or if you want to steal my identity, my birth date's on there, my height, my eye color, all that stuff's on there. It wasn't Instagram that did it. It was my behavior on Instagram that was a risky behavior that could turn into a dangerous situation. So let's focus on the behaviors, not the apps. And where do risky behaviors happen? Okay. Well, we already discovered kids make mistakes, part of growing up, right? Kids use apps, social media, and technology, right? We know that. So mistakes will happen on apps, social media, and technology. Where kids go, where kids play, that's where mistakes could happen, right? Wherever a kid's going to be, that's where the mistake's going to happen, because kids make mistakes. And this is their playground, whether it's in a school playground, in the school classroom, whether it's at the movies, whether it's wherever they go or wherever they go. If they're on their phone, if they're in a text message, if they're in an email, in Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, whatever it is, that's where the mistake's going to happen. Okay, and what are the mistakes and what are the apps, right? Well, the mistakes can easily be a result of the type of app they use. So if kids used Facebook, right, they don't, but if they used Facebook, and I put this in here for you because most adults have Facebook or have seen it, you can understand the kind of mistakes you can see on Facebook. I see it daily on my Facebook, right? Misinformation being shared, people posting emotional things that start fights and stuff like that. So if they're on Facebook or you're on Facebook, that's the types of mistakes that can happen. It's based upon how Facebook functions. If they are on Instagram, the mistake's going to be how Instagram functions, right? And Twitter, let's say they're on Twitter. I mean, if they make a mistake on Twitter, that it's going to be a mistake based upon the platform, how Twitter works, if that makes sense, right? I'm going to do a little app introduction here before I end, right? Because I want to show you a couple different things. But this is TikTok. TikTok, I have high school kids on TikTok, and I have second graders on TikTok. And when I talk to the high school kids about second graders being on TikTok, they're kind of concerned and wanting to know why second graders are on TikTok. And I tell them because I don't think their parents know all the stuff that's on TikTok, because if they did, they wouldn't be on TikTok anymore, right? So TikTok, here's the app rating for TikTok. It is 12 plus. For mild profanity, crude humor, mild alcohol, tobacco, drug use, references, mild sexual content, nudity, mild mature suggestive themes, mild cartoon and fantasy violence. And I have a TikTok account. I get on here probably about once a month just to see what's going on and keep up with the trends. And 12 plus is nowhere near what TikTok should be rated. It should be like 18, right? But it's not. And I've got second graders on TikTok, and I really worry about the things that they're going to see out there. But that's the app rating for that. So if there's a mistake that's going to happen, it'll be based upon how TikTok functions, right? Snapchat. I could spend 2 hours talking to you about Snapchat, but I wanted to just kind of throw it in there a little bit because I'm pretty sure you're aware of Snapchat, but these next few ones, I'm not sure if you're aware of and how they interface with Snapchat. YOLO, okay, is probably stands for you only live once, right? But it's called YOLO. And what you do is you log into YOLO using your Snapchat user ID, right? So you don't have to create an account on YOLO. You just open up YOLO, let it connect to Snapchat, and it's got access to your Bitmojis and all kinds of fun things, right? But YOLO is, it allows you to post an anonymous messaging little function on your Snapchat feed, so that basically if I'm scrolling through your story and I see that you put this box in there because you have YOLO, and I can type you questions or say things to you and you don't know who they're coming from. So it makes an anonymous chat feature that connects to Snapchat. And that's as simple as I can put it. You really have to use it to see it. But point is, I have a lot of fifth graders and sixth graders that are getting bullied on Snapchat, and mean things are being said, and it's not necessarily through Snapchat because they know who it is if it's through Snapchat. But if they're using YOLO through Snapchat, then they don't know who are saying these unkind things to them. I had an 11-year-old that was talking to me about YOLO, and she said, why are people saying mean things to me on this? And I said, well, because if it was in the hallway and they said mean things to you, there's accountability. You know who they are. You know what they said. When it's on YOLO, they don't have that accountability. It's gone, right? And it's just that easy to be unkind online. The next one I want to show you about is LMK, for Let Me Know. It functions just like YOLO, connects through Snapchat, but this one allows you to post anonymous polls. So you could put a poll on there that says, would you date me? Yes, no, or maybe. It also has a star rating on there. You can post your a rating on there so that people can anonymously rate you from 1 star to 5 stars. As you can imagine, in middle school, not good things get posted through this stuff. It's really can be kind of damaging to your psyche, right? Because a lot of middle schoolers are trying to figure out who they are and who their friends are and why people like them or don't like them, and they're trying to kind of fit in. Middle school's tough. Like, I work in a middle school, and between 5th and 8th grade, like, you come in 5th grade, you're all worried about getting stuffed in the locker and nervous. But by the time you leave in 8th grade, your hair's purple. Like, a whole lot happens between 5th and 8th grade. And this just adds to the difficulty. And then this is Hoop. It is it connects to Snapchat, sorta, kind of. And there's a couple other ones out there like this, but this was told to me by a 13-year-old who was telling me that basically you can go on Hoop, create a little account, and like if you like people and they like you back, then you share your Snapchat user IDs, and then you have more Snapchat friends. The 13-year-old that was telling me about it basically said that she's just trying to get more Snapchat friends from all over the world, right? But she also said that people will ask for really inappropriate things on Hoop, such as pictures that they don't want to send, stuff like that. The app rating for Hoop is also 12 plus, and you can see that mild sexual content and nudity, mild profanity, crude humor, mild mature suggestive themes. My daughter's 11. When she turns 12, that's not okay for my 12-year-old, right? So just a little sidebar, whenever you're thinking about apps and you're just looking at the rating, you can't just look at the rating number and go with it. You have to read more into it, do a Google search on the app, look a little bit more into it. I've got a website that has some of these apps on it. You can go read about it, because that's not okay for a 12-year-old, right? And I'm going to be talking about app ratings in a future training that I'm doing, but my point is we really have to vet the app ratings, and every company assigns the app ratings a little bit differently, but basically the people providing you the app, like Apple or Google Play, aren't the ones providing the app rating. It's the developers mainly that create this. So a developer is going to try to get them as young as they can to get them to use this app, because the younger they are, the more they're going to want to use it. So do a little research into the app ratings. There on my website under resources, you'll find this app resource guide. It will give you, again, a lot of these apps. You can kind of click through and learn a bit more on your own about those. There are some of the other resources on the website. I've got a technology contract, cyberbullying. There's all kinds of good resources on there. They're on there, they're free, use them. The technology contract, if a child has a device, owns a device, they should have this contract in place before they use that device. It's just, you have a contract with Verizon, AT&T, Sprint, whoever, to use that device. Your child should have a contract to use it in your house. And it spells it all out for you. It's very easy. It's pretty lengthy, but whenever you're giving a child this personal pocket computer, you got to have some kind of contract in place. And I think about an adult's role in prevention. What should we do, right? You have to go online and learn the lingo. We have to be part of the game here a little bit. You have to create accounts, and there's a lot of resistance around this. But if your child wants Snapchat, Instagram, or TikTok, you should have it first, learn the culture, see if you're okay with that, because I guarantee you, you might be questioning what's okay for your child after you, play on it a little bit yourself. And communication's the key. What I find more at the high school, I really get this at the high school, because they're a little bit more wise at the high school, and they're able to talk about this a little bit with some more common sense. But at the high school, I really get that the kids that their parents are open and talk to them about this stuff are the kids that tell parents when they have concerns or need help, right? The communication thing. It's the parents that are really tight about this and yell at their kids and blame them for things. They don't tell their parents anything. So you have to be open, and communication is really the key. And really, communication is the key to the world, if you ask me, right? And I've had a few parents tell me, but I don't do social media. I'm afraid to have an account. And I'm like, so you're allowing your child to have something you're afraid of, right? That doesn't make any sense to me. I will never allow my children to have something I'm afraid of. You might not like it. You might not use it the way your kids do, but you have to have something in order to see if it's okay for your kids, right? So to summarize, are there really dangerous apps? Not in my book, right? No, I have no apps that are in my pocket hurting me, right? Are kids engaged in risky behaviors on apps? Yes, they are. I see it all the time. I hear about it all the time. Kids make mistakes, right? And part of them is the risky behaviors. And so where do you have the influence? The apps or the kids, right? You have the influence over the young people. Let's stay there and focus on that. I have a Facebook page, Shape the Sky. You just go on there, give that a like. I post stuff there, every day of the week to try to keep you moving in the right direction. And it's not just all about apps, but it's all about being a parent, anything that has to do with keeping up with society and today's digital world. So I want to thank you for coming. And let me attend. I am going to stop sharing my screen here, and I am going to. I have to leave. Like I said, I double booked myself, but I will stick around for a couple minutes right now for some questions if anybody has any.
I don't see any questions coming through right now. Oh, here's one. Sorry about that. Ryan, in your work with schools, how have you seen or how could SAP professionals and school staff work with students to support better decision-making skills while using social media?
That's a good question because I think we go where our comfort level is, and SAP people that are going into schools have some more training in mental health, and that's their comfort level. And working with kids is obviously comfort level, but I've had some SAP folks I know that don't have the technology that the kids do. They have a flip phone, and I'm like, well, it's number one, it's kind of hard to relate to them like that. But also, like, are you asking those questions? Because I think sometimes we're afraid to ask those questions around technology because we don't have the answer all the time. But like every kid I talk to, I ask, I don't ask like really intrusive things like, hey, have you seen TikTok? It can be really bad, right? I say stuff like, tell me about your favorite apps. Tell me what you're watching on Netflix. I have 11-year-old. My most recent one, she was 11 and cutting herself because she watched 13 Reasons, right? So I'm always asking questions about technology because they like that. Once they find out that I run around, do trainings across the country about Snapchat, they first of all, they think it's hilarious. Second of all, they have no idea what I'm talking about. Why, how can you spend 2 hours talking about this stuff to parents? So they think it's great that I'm doing that. But then I have certain kids that'll come in and tell me about the apps, and that just creates a relationship right there that's really easy because our kids are on Netflix, they're using technology. Like one of the principles in counseling is meet your client where they're at. Well, we have to meet our clients where they're at. They're on technology, they're using social media. I had a kid one time, she was 13, and I was talking about Snapchat, and she's like, you don't have Snapchat. And I opened up my phone and showed her my little Bitmoji on Snapchat. And she looked at me horrified. She's like, well, but why do you have Snapchat? I'm like, you only have to be 13 to have Snapchat. I'm over 13. I'm allowed to have it. But like, then that opened up something else because she thought I had no clue about this. Why even bother talking to me about it? I've had kids that have had their Snapchat account hijacked and been locked out of it. And, they know I'm coming on Wednesday and I'm going to talk to them. And I know more about this. They've waited and they're like, you got to help me with this. Like, how do I get this unlocked? And like, I emailed Snapchat for that one particular occasion and they actually emailed me back. I mean, I emailed them and said, I'm a counselor with a kid in a school right now. We're having a problem. Can you help us? And they were willing to help us, but the kid didn't remember what phone number or email they signed up with their account with, so that we couldn't do anything. But they're willing to listen when they know that I'm in the same classroom, so to speak, as them.
Thank you. There's one more question. If our kids are older, how do you suggest we approach them?
What do you know what older is? I mean, okay, so let's go with the high school kids. I approach the high school kids and I always tell them this, because often they put me in an assembly in front of 400 high school kids and I'm supposed to talk about Snapchat. And I'm not sure if you guys can see me, but I have like gray hair, right? So, the kids are like, oh man, they brought in some old dude to talk to me about Snapchat. But what I always tell them is like, you guys are the experts. You guys use this way more than I do. You know more about it, and I'm willing to listen to you teach me about this. But let me show you some things I've learned that other kids have told me, right? That's my line. And it always works because I take the power from me and put it in their hands, and they're willing to listen. And then invariably, whenever I get done and I get feedback from the kids in the surveys I do, a lot of them said that was good. I didn't know a couple of those things. I knew a lot of that stuff. But the way you presented it to me, you didn't lecture us and talk to us like, kids don't like lectures. They don't like being told what to do, but it's like making that bond with them and saying like, listen, you probably know more about TikTok than I do, but I want to learn, like, show me. And I want to learn about Snapchat and stuff like that. Like, let's partner up here because that's the way to go with high school kids. And then if you realize there might be something you don't want them to use, then you can start winding it back from there. Say, you know what, I'm not quite comfortable with you using that right now. So let's talk about a mutual way we can agree that, maybe we can replace it with something else. I know it's the most fun thing right now. Kids all have it, but let's talk about it, okay? Because they'll just sneak and get it anyway if you don't. One of the things I did for a parent one time, she emailed me and said, my daughter's 12. She wants TikTok. I'm not okay with that, but TikTok's age is 12. What do I do? And I said, just pull up the TikTok 12 plus, like I showed you guys there, that screenshot. Just pull that up on your phone and read those things to your 12-year-old and say, I'm not okay with those for you as a 12-year-old, as your parent, right? Other people might not understand that, or they might even be okay with that, but I'm not okay with that as your mom when you're 12 years old, right? And that took care of the problem right there.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, no other questions?
Not right now, I guess.
Okay, well, I am going to leave you guys. I appreciate you for having me.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it.
Sure thing. We'll talk to you
Great.
later.
Yeah, take care.
So thank you to Ryan so much for that great information. I know I'll be checking out that website. I suggest for everyone on here to pass on the word to others and for yourself too, so that we're all being safe with our children and knowing what's going on out there and the new lingo and things like that. So now I want to pass it to Aaron with the two scholars. We're thrilled to be joined by two scholars from Propel Montour High School to hear their experiences with social media. So right now I'll pass the floor over to Erin and she will introduce the scholars and some questions.
So we have two, as Ms. we have two scholars joining us this evening from Montour High School. Cassidy, who is a junior this upcoming year, and Nakaya, who will be a sophomore this upcoming year. So girls, whichever one of you want to answer the question first. The first question is, at what age did you start using social media?
Well, I started using social media when I was fourth grade, third or fourth grade.
Okay. What sites would you, if you don't mind me asking, what sites would you use when you were in fourth grade?
I used Kick. This is app where you could just like message people.
Okay. Nakaya, how old were you when you started using social media?
I think I was around the same age as Cassidy. I was on TikTok and Musical.ly.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, Cassidy, you were on Musical.ly too then. What about the next question is, what is your opinion of social media right now?
I feel like everyone's opinionated, like they have an opinion or something. Like sometimes it's like if you're not like a person, you won't fit in to anything because people want to be like them. If that makes
sense.
I feel like social media is kind of like a way to connect with people.
Mm-hmm.
Like sharing ideas, your feelings. Like social media isn't always a bad thing.
Right. So this evening, the topic is on social media and anxiety. Do you think that social media can increase people's anxiety, especially as a teenager? Why or why not?
I think, yeah. Because it's like nowadays teenagers are on the internet just to fit in. And if you're not, you don't look this way or you don't act that way, people
there's
like,
a certain way people want you to be
people
and
yeah.
accept you. So, and that could hurt somebody's mental and like physical appearance.
Mm-hmm. So you girls
Yeah.
agree that you both agree with each other that social media can increase anxiety.
Hmm.
Okay. Is there anything that you girls want to share in regards to your opinion of why you believe that? Anything maybe you have seen on social media, not personal stories, but anything that you've seen on social media as teenagers that you two both are in agreement with that opinion?
I mean, there's always people online that are always making fun of people because of what they have on, or like what their hair looks like, how much it costs, and all this other stuff.
Materialistic, basically. Like there,
Yeah.
if a different person doesn't have like material, like say if you don't have like a key belt or something somebody else does, or like theirs is really fake, but they look the same and they're not, one's real, one's fake. They'll still judge you on that just because it's fake, even though like it almost costs as much. If they're
Yeah. I just feel like if it's not a certain brand, or if it doesn't look a certain way, then it's not right.
Well, girls, thank you so much for sharing, answering those questions. We all appreciate you participating in this evening's webinar.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So some of you might be wondering why PPIW is now having this webinar. And I think it's kind of important, we all feel it's important to state that the numbers don't lie. So in the year 2012, 90% of 13 to 17-year-olds reported using some form of social media. And about 70% of adults use social media regularly, and about half use 2 or more social media platforms, 2 or more. So it's expected that with this use, that with all this, usage will increase. So with that being said, I want everybody to stop what you're doing. If you're on your phone, if you have a tablet, your iPad, your computer, take a look and see how many social media platforms you have. Ryan spoke earlier about different social media apps, from Hoop to Snapchat to Nolo to Instagram, and stop and take a look at that. Now, social media was a platform that was utilized a great deal prior to the COVID-19 pandemic. However, now more than ever do people utilize social media. So as you stopped and you took a look at your phone, your whatever electronic device you put apps on, did your social media platforms, did the number of apps that you use, did they increase? Did you start downloading more apps so that you can communicate more with people or see more, especially with everybody being in home? Social media is ever changing and evolving, and we just heard some very interesting educational things in regard to social media. Anything can be found on social media with just a swipe to the right. And this evening, the girls shared their opinions in regards to their thoughts of anxiety in social media. So to piggyback off what the scholars have stated, studies have shown that there is a strong link in between heavy social media and the increased risk for depression, anxiety, loneliness, self-harm, and suicidal thoughts.
Okay, so we heard a little bit about some ways that social media can contribute to anxiety, and a lot of negative things, especially from Ryan. But I want to touch on how social media can be used for good. And our two scholars did an awesome job kind of jumping in with some of these. The first is that social media provides connection, especially in how disconnected we are in terms of being stuck in our houses and socially distancing. Social media provides a great way for us to just kind of connect even in that way. It just feels nice to FaceTime people, feels nice to just connect in that way. Additionally, social media offers support for specific needs. So there is support available for various mental health situations, as there are pages for depression, pages for anxiety, and it's a great way for people to, again, connect and then get some information about things that they might be experiencing. The next point is that social media has been huge in the social justice movement, especially with the current events that are going on, with many people really waking up to the racism that exists in our country. Social media has been huge for getting names and faces and spreading information in a really great way for people to become informed. Social media also allows people to explore different group membership. They can find people who are also interested in the same band, the same fashion designer. It's a great way to connect with people who have similar interests as you. Back to what I said about current events, again, it just is really helpful for people to know what's going on. It seems like, especially in Pennsylvania, our COVID situation changes day to day, and social media, I know I often get my news from, or I'll see something that reminds me that I should investigate something. It's a really great tool for that. And lastly, social media can encourage creativity, especially in our preteens and teens. We see them doing the TikTok dances and connecting that way. Again, as our girls said, it's a great way for people to share their feelings and to express themselves. I thought that was an awesome point as well. Erin, you're on mute.
I apologize, everyone. So social media and anxiety. Social media can heighten anxiety just by increasing the user's ability to keep up to date with the activities of their social circles. And I'm happy that the girls kind of touched on this a little bit, because it ties in with the next piece. And it's that fear of missing out, that fear that you're missing out on certain things that can impact your self-esteem, that can trigger the anxiety and even fuel greater social media use. So the girls talked about, almost in a sense, the haves and have-nots. So think about that as a teenager and you don't have certain things. Or, you know, many people have multiple apps. So in terms of their social circles and activities, you know, how many people are watching my Snapchat story? How many likes am I getting on this? Oh, what if they put this out on social media? What are people going to think of me then? That's a great deal of anxiety on one hand, and then the next with the fear of missing out, feeling as though you're missing things and you're not important to people. That's a big deal, especially for a teenager who's going through a great deal of things just growing up. So right now, current data shows that many people who utilize social media a great deal are in fact anxious. And when they're not utilizing social media, they tend to turn to social media to reduce the withdrawal anxiety, so to speak. And they end up with another form of anxiety, stemming from anxiety produced by engaging with digital platforms. Stop and think for a second. How many people who utilize social media, the first thing they do is they get up and they take a look at their feed? If you are an adult, maybe it's your Facebook. If you were a teenager, maybe it is Snapchat stories. Throughout this whole experience with COVID, one of the key points that stands out to me is sleep patterns with teenagers and the usage of social media all night long. I didn't have a good night's sleep. I was up on YouTube. I was on Snapchat. I was on the gram, whatever it may be. That withdrawal anxiety from not being on. However, it does appear that social media, at least in part, feeds off the anxieties that it generates, subverting the social and psychological tendencies that most of us have to fuel its usage. So with that in mind, I want you to stop and think about that. Let that kind of seep into you. And when we have the Q&A portion, if you feel like sharing or you have any questions in regards to things, please feel free to touch on those things.
Here we go. Okay, sorry. All right, thank you, Erin. So a little bit more about anxiety. Anxiety is a normal reaction to the world around us. Anxiety exists within us as a tool for survival, right? We want to be frightened by bears, and we want to be nervous when we hear loud sounds. Those are tools for survival that are just in us. The primary characteristic of anxiety is worry, which is fear that future events will have negative outcomes. So when we think of anxiety, we often think of that feeling that we feel, maybe we feel it in our chest. There's tons of different ways to experience it, but it's that thinking about future events and anticipating a negative outcome. When we're looking at children, kids that are younger tend to have more anxiety about a specific event in their life. Whereas as kids age, developmentally, they begin to have sources of anxiety that are a little bit more social, a little bit more abstract. And then that's when we start to worry about things like social acceptance. Again, like the scholars that shared touched on, you know, her hair looks great. Does my hair look good? So having those anxieties that are more geared towards social acceptance, the future, and things like that. So this is a table from the National Association of School Psychologists. I really just like how it lays out how anxiety can affect children. And I like the columns that they break them up into. So again, when we're looking at the thinking and learning column, we see things like worry, we see things like concentration problems. Again, when we are feeling anxious about something, those are symptoms that we are going to experience, and those are completely normal. As we move over to the columns, we see symptoms that become a little bit more abnormal and a little bit more worrisome. So when we look at things like restlessness, again, being worried about something, we may have difficulty falling asleep. But if we're experiencing a long stretch of not being able to sleep and insomnia, that's when we have a good indication that our anxiety really could use some intervention. And then again, just a couple others when we're looking at withdrawal, withdrawing from things like social events, friends, especially when a child is normally very social. Those are all red flags for us. Yeah, again, just highlighting a few when anxiety becomes a concern, avoiding social situations, especially as we get to the middle school and teen years. Those are typically very social years where kids are learning what groups they belong in, who they like to hang out with, what their interests are, and then finding people with those similar interests. So when we find that kids are avoiding social situations, that's typically cause for some concern. Fears are irrational. Again, being worried about perhaps a conflict with a friend or something like that, completely typical. But when we're looking at fears that are maybe a little bit irrational or far-fetched, that's also cause for concern. Experiencing of panic attacks, again, those can look a lot of different ways, typically really increased heart rate, sweating, a fear of just really intense dread, a state of constant distress, and then also avoiding everyday activities. And these are all things that as a support team and as a student assistance program team, we are looking at, and we are making sure that we are providing those supports for kids that are experiencing those things.
Well, thank you, Lindsay, for all that. So as a team and as individuals, what are some decreasing anxiety techniques that we can use in order to assist us with alleviating that uneasy feeling? Some of them are some deep breathing exercises, which are taking slow, long, deep breaths through the nose, holding it for at least 3 seconds, and slowly releasing out the mouth, and repeating them as many times as you need in order for you to feel those palpitations from your heart or just to feel comfort. Another one is counting to 10 or backwards from 10 to 1. Even reaching out to others, close friends, family members, expressing your feelings is very important verbally instead of holding those feelings inside, because they can turn into and manifest into something much greater and lead on to other mental health illnesses as well. And another way, if you don't feel comfortable with speaking to someone at the present moment about what you're going through and experiencing anxiety, journaling your thoughts in a book, on a tablet, in your phone is another great way to at least get those feelings out so they're not manifesting. Another thing is meditation, and that meditation helps you remain grounded and in the present, being mindful of your surroundings instead of focusing on the bad or the things that happen that you didn't like throughout the day. We can turn around and take a moment, 10 minutes of meditation, and focus on the good and just being at peace with your own self. Make sure you maintain appropriate sleeping and eating habits. That can also affect and increase your anxiety, as long as with physical exercise as well. Your body will start to be symptomatic and show those symptoms of anxiety. You'll become, restless, or you'll become very fatigued or very fidgety. So balancing it out with physical exercise is a great way to do that. Also, reciting some positive attributes about yourself. I'm a great artist. I'm a good friend to others. I'm great at sports. Look in the mirror and tell them things to yourself. I can dance. I love dancing. I love to draw. I'm good at Fortnite. Whatever you feel you're good at, or you're a great friend, is one way to recite some positive things about yourself. And another thing that I thought of too, that one that I really use a lot, is listening to music. Sometimes I like to just put on some headphones or go in a room and just turn up my music and just let those sounds come loudly. So then it takes me away from what I was feeling, that anxiety moment of fear or whatnot. And listening to music does help too. And then if none of those work, or you don't feel comfortable with practicing any of those, definitely seek mental health therapy if it's needed. So with conclusion, just want to express that everyone goes through symptoms of anxiety. There's nothing unnormal about that. That's just how we are made as individuals. It's just a part of managing it and being able to balance it with our day-to-day life, right? So day to day, we have so much to worry about in our real lives, especially now with COVID-19 going on. It's very extra, and everyone is experiencing this with family, finances, relationships, jobs, and etc. So social media can help us escape reality, but you don't want to go too far into it to where you're not able to come back, right? And be at the present moment with your friends, family, loved ones, and others. So it can also add to that stress if you stay stuck in that. So it's about balancing social media with day-to-day life. And the key to practicing mental wellness is through acknowledging and then managing those symptoms of anxiety appropriately. So with that being said, I would like to thank everyone for their participation in this, and wanted to see if we have any questions from the chat.
Yep, there's a couple questions coming through here. If Nakaya and Cassidy are still on the call, there was one question for the students. Is there any advice that you would give to a scholar who is starting high school soon with regard to social media use?
I think I would tell them be careful what you post and what you say, because a lot of things you say on the internet, like everything on the internet is forever, and you can't delete something and think someone won't find it once they need it to prove something on you or something like that. And be careful all the things you send people.
Great, thank you, Nakaya.
You're welcome.
Okay. And for PPIW staff, what are some other ways that you'll be supporting scholars throughout the summer?
That's a great question. So with being virtual, we had a plan in place where we were supporting our scholars, one via our Google Classroom. So we have a Google Classroom setup where we post content. We're able to connect with scholars that way. Sometimes it's like fun little challenges and things. Sometimes it's more information, mental health based. Additionally, we are preparing for the year ahead as best that we can, trying to do a bunch of trainings and learning all of the information that we can learn. Anything to add, Raylene or Erin?
Yeah, I just wanted to say too, throughout the summer, as well as supporting the scholars, been also supporting the parents during this time in order to help alleviate some of that parenting stressors that were on the parents and continue to be on the parents. That way, the scholars aren't picking up that extra baggage that is carried down as residual, of course. And then also with the webinar series, we want to hopefully continue this throughout the summer as well as into school, just to bring up some more topics that the families and scholars would be interested in as far as what they would want to hear from PPIW or what their needs specifically would be from PPIW, so that we can make sure that we're serving them appropriately.
Okay, thank you. Another question here, this one's for Nakaya again. What message do you want to give to adults who are listening? How can adults help? All right, maybe she stepped away for a minute. There is another question for staff I can read. How can we help kids and ourselves take a break from technology when that seems to be currently the only way to interact with others and get information? Good question.
I can speak on personally what I do with my children, because Fortnite has become the household theme, or even trying to get on TikTok, just trying. So what I try to do is we take downtime, set aside time, family time. We have family movie night. We're cooking together. I'm including them in cooking dinner or breakfast, trying out new recipes. Of course, they're staying up later than usual, so then sometimes I'm staying up later with them. It's just more of a balance of probably scratching that typical 9-to-5 day, right? And making it work for what it works for. We're outside, we're kicking the ball around, and in between we're talking about the upcoming unknown school year for them, talking to them about wearing masks. So trying to keep everything around them that they see in social media, whether it be on TV or just on websites, at a normal pace for them, but still fun, letting them be kids. I think it's important to let kids be kids.
Also, the Google Classrooms, there are great examples of scheduling and to help create schedules, because even though it's important for kids to be kids, their kids grow up way too fast in this society as a whole now than maybe 10, 15 years ago. But structure and consistency is so important. So even as an adult, if social media usage is stressing you out, you can limit your time to be like, okay, I'm only going to go on social media from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. and try to follow that set schedule for yourself as well. I know that on the Google Classrooms, there's a list of ideas back in the March lessons of schedules to follow in regards to sleep patterns, in regards to social media usage. So if you have the ability to get onto the Google Classrooms, I implore you to get onto our Google Classrooms. And if you don't have access, our emails are listed in this. And please feel free to reach out to us through email so that you can get on some of those links for the Google Classroom. Because as we've all stated and learned, virtual is kind of the way since COVID. So this is the best way we can help educate each other and the kids by really using those Google Classrooms. And we need you, Propel parents and Propel scholars, to make this great, because this is for you. PPIW is here for you. And the best way we can help you is if we all work together as a team. So.
Thank you, Ms. Strader. I believe that is it for our questions.
I love this that Lindsay included for us, this power statement here. So I want to read that loudly and proudly, okay? So thank you for taking the time to learn with us tonight. It was definitely learning experiences for us all. Knowledge is power, and we hope we have provided some tools on how we can all be safer and more responsible in our online lives. I think that's perfect.
Yes. Thank you. And I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank Ms. Owens, Ms. Strader, Ms. Vicoria, and our special guest, Mr. Klinging-Smith from Shape the Sky LLC. So a special thank you from myself and the team and all of the teams at Propel Schools. So thank you for giving our scholars and their parents and guardians the opportunity to learn more about such an important topic. The contact information for Ms. Owens, Ms. Strader, and Ms. Vicoria is here on this slide. So once again, thank you everyone, and hopefully we'll see you all next time. All right, take care. Thank you.